The other side of me is like the reality of the situation is like, I think I just tore my plantar fascia and I haven't even started the Olympic trials. How the hell am I going to get through this? And then like taking the time to just like soak it in. And like, I remember I walked out to the stadium and I just like took a minute to like look at the lights, look at my family, look at the track, and just like really be there and soak it in. Cause I think I knew this could potentially be my last race. Like, I don't know how I'm going to even get through this.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of All Smith. Today's guest is a dynamic American heptathlete who represented the U.S. at the Tokyo Olympics. She's known for her incredible versatility across 7 different track and field events, and she'd showcased her strength, speed, and endurance on the world stage. Today, I'd love to introduce Annie Kunz.
What an intro. Thank you so much for having me.
I had to sit with that for a second. I was like, man, that's like some of your story, but there's so much more that we'll unpack today.
I'm excited. Thanks for letting me be here.
I'm excited to chat with you today. There was a quote it's one of my favorite quotes. And listening to how you've overcome so much adversity, I wanted to share it with you, and I feel like we could start our conversation there. Okay. And it's, challenges are what make life interesting, but overcoming those challenges is what makes life meaningful.
Builds character.
Absolutely. And you've gone through that in the recent past, overcoming injury. You had this thought ideation of, this is the plan, this is the path, we're going to the Olympics again. And then injury set in. Yeah. When you think about life and the meaning behind it and overcoming challenges, what comes to mind?
Well, I always say, we make plans and God laughs at us. That's like one of my favorite things. And I think looking back on my career, you come off this pinnacle moment going to the Olympics, and it's my best season ever. You make an Olympic team. You're like, okay, it's going to be a little bit easier from now on.
That box has been checked.
Yeah, that was not the case. If anything, I think post-Olympics was probably the hardest run that I've had the last 3 years, just battling with injury, identity, things like that. So, I look back at my process to the first Olympics, and there were a lot of challenges that I had to overcome in other ways, like financially and things like that. But post Tokyo, the challenges that I had to overcome with my, injuries, I think, especially as an athlete, they're going to teach you so much. And it's really about discipline, and you learn a lot about yourself, how bad you really want things, because it's not the fun stuff. You're not getting any attention. You're doing the day-to-day rehab things that no one likes to do. And then I think just going through a lot of like identity crisis stuff, it has really shaped who I am today. And, my Tokyo run, the 5 years training for that versus the Paris run, they were completely different experiences. But I think I'm actually most grateful for this last 3 years training for Paris, as it wasn't my most successful. But I just feel like I'm so proud of who I am because of all the things that I overcame and the things that I've learned along the way. So yeah, I don't know. I think the challenges, they just shape who you are. And I always say you learn a lot more from your failures than your successes. And that's really kind of my saying over the last 3 years. I've failed a lot and I've learned a lot. It's
also just being married to the process and divorced from the outcome. Because what's so meaningful is that it's who Annie became in the midst of the plan not being executed.
Totally.
And the plan not being executed wasn't your fault. It was based on injury and things that are outside of your control. So then there's acceptance. There's so many different elements that come from that. There's the introduction of your mental coach. There's realizing like, hey, how I went from A to B is not how I go from B to C. Yeah. And accepting that, and then sitting with that and realizing like, okay, reset, recalibrate, and let's get back to the drawing board. Yeah. When you think about Tokyo, what was the pinnacle of that? Because like you can very easily say like, hey, the 5 years and the lead up to that, but that almost feels the way you describe it, like it's dissipated in the distance. And Tokyo seems to like play at the forefront a little bit. Yeah. So sorry, go back to your question though. When you think about Tokyo, what was the pinnacle moment?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you trained for 5 years. For me too, Tokyo, I didn't have sponsors. I didn't have endorsements. Like I had no money to my name. Like, thankfully, I have an amazing, supportive, family and friends that allowed me to continue on and chase my dreams. That was the biggest difference training for Tokyo. Like, I just was so passionate about it. I had this goal and dream that I've had since I was a little kid. So, like, I think there's even an interview from high school where, I'm talking about wanting to become an Olympian in track and soccer. And cool. I remember as a little girl watching, I went to the Sacramento Olympic trials, and I went with my cousins, and my mom remembers distinctly, like, I was just enamored. Like, my focus was just on the track. It was like 110 degrees out. It was awful. It was miserable. My cousins wanted to leave. And I was just locked in. And I remember watching those girls compete and just like dreaming that I could be one day. So for me, Tokyo was the result of that. Like, I reached that dream. I finally got there. And it was a year that I just didn't expect. We were coming off of COVID, so
they weren't even sure if they were going to do the Olympics that year.
Yeah,
right?
There was a lot, and that's a whole other layer to the Tokyo experience, where there was talks of it getting canceled, and we've trained for 4 years at that point, and then we were like, you're going to cancel the Olympics. Like, that was a huge thing, dealing with that, but I finally got to that point. I didn't expect to win the Olympic trials. Like, I hadn't had a heptathlon score in 2 years because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't know what was going to happen. I had no clue. I knew I was ready to put up a big number, but I didn't realize it was going to score 6,700 points and win the Olympic trials. Like, I just shocked the hell out of myself. And I think you even see it, like, when you see the replays, I look at the score and I start crying, and I just am flooded with emotion because I just didn't expect any of it. So I think that was the most special thing about that year, is it was just like so unexpected. I leave Olympic trials, that whole journey. I just wanted to become an Olympian. I just wanted to compete at the Olympics. And then after trials, I'm like, oh shit, like, I could medal. Like, my score at trials would medal at the Olympics any other year. So I was just super excited that I was even at that place. I didn't expect it. So it was such a special year, and this pinnacle experience of your career. You've trained literally since I was 2.5 years old. I've been in track and field. So, like, my entire life I've trained for this, and I finally get to experience it. And it was, obviously it was COVID. There weren't fans. My family couldn't be there. There were aspects of it that were really, sad and bittersweet a little bit. But I just soaked it in like a sponge. Like, I still get, like, goosebumps thinking about it.
I can feel it.
Yeah,
it's like the feeling is palpable.
Yeah, it was special. And I think about, that Tokyo as a meet was not my best meet. It's hard because Europeans actually, they get selected by their countries to go. So they don't have to actually, like, qualify at Olympic trials.
Oh, okay.
The U.S. is really special, and that's why they always say it's the hardest team to make, because you have to get top 3 at the Olympic trials. So you could be the best in the world for 4 years, and you get 4th at Olympic trials. You don't go. So it's the pressure of that is crazy.
What does Eminem say? One shot, one opportunity.
Literally, it's like you got one meet in 4 years that matters.
That's tough.
Yeah, it's
like one moment really being indicative of your future.
Yeah,
and of your legacy.
Totally. And I didn't have a meet going in, so it's just.
Did you think of it that way, or in that moment were you just like so full of like piss and vinegar of just excitement for the presence of being there that like that didn't land on your radar?
It shifted towards that, but I remember the 2 weeks leading up to trials, like, I was a mess. The pressure of it all was getting to me. I was so stressed out. I was, like, emotional at practice. I remember calling my mental coach. I had, like, the javelin was always my, like, weakness. So I was, like, just trying to figure it out. I'm like, I only have 2 weeks, got to figure this out, and, like, had a horrible practice. My coach actually calls my mental coach during practice, and it's like, hey man, we need you. Like, I had like a 30-minute session with him, went back out to jabs. Like, I was a disaster. And then it completely shifted, where I just feel like I was gripping on so tightly to this outcome of making the team that it was crippling me completely. And I finally got to the point, like 2 days before trials, where I released that control. I was like, God, I give it to you. Like, I've done everything in my control to give myself the best opportunity here. All I can do is give it my best shot. And if that means I don't make the Olympic team, I accept that, and I have peace about it, because I've given this everything I have. And like, that freedom I felt of just giving it to God and just going out there and doing my best and like enjoying the moment. Like that is so much of what I worked with my mental coach that whole year, is like being present, enjoying the process. And I was able to just compete freely, compete with joy in my heart. Like I was grateful. I looked up at the crowd. I'm like, oh my God, my whole family is here. Like I'm at the Olympic trials. Like this is incredible. I'm going to enjoy it. I don't want to look back and be like, God, I was so anxious I didn't even have fun at that meet. Like, because that's why we do it, right? Like that's why we do sports, because it's fun. And I think because I finally was able to let go and just give it to God and enjoy myself and be present is why I made the team.
That's so special. What I'm hearing there is there's surviving and then there's thriving.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're so overwhelmed with the pressure, you're gripping onto the sand like this. And when you're holding sand like this, you don't really get much. But when you loosen that grip and kind of come here, you can actually hold a lot more sand. You can hold a lot more capacity to manage emotion, to manage the pressure, and allow yourself to diffuse your talents into the world, and also just like be a sponge to absorb the experience. Yeah. As opposed to like, no. You know what I mean? Like being real tight.
Adapt and,
like tight is a really commonality within track, right? You see it in the final 100 of like the 400 or even the 800 in your race. You see that butt and hamstring lock. You see people get up into their traps. And something that comes to mind there is the best athlete's the most relaxed athlete. Yeah. How do you get yourself into a relaxed state with your breath and management of your self-talk, so that way your musculature doesn't tighten up and you can express your full capacity?
I mean, it's definitely hard. I think, over trying, I think in sports is very common, especially
But if I just try harder, self-reliance is everything. Totally. Like I should be able to get the thing.
Yeah. And like, you can even see it like in video and stuff, like when my face is tense, my traps are tighter, like I'm not relaxing so that I can compete at my best abilities. So getting in that flow state, that's the thing I remember about Olympic trials. Like I was in that flow state, and like when you feel that, it is like, oh my God, it's like the best thing ever. And a lot of it is breath work. I work a lot. The whole Olympic year, I started working with my mental coach. I found him in like November of the Olympic year. I worked with him every single week, the whole year. And the start of it is just mindfulness practice. Like I remember he like made me like hold a macadamia nut, and he's like, smell it. What does it feel like? What rigid? Like close my eyes. We do a lot of breath work. We do a lot of meditations, guided, non-guided. That was a big part of my training. Every morning I was doing a meditation. When I
want to bookmark you there real quick. It's hard for a high performing athlete to do that.
It's so hard
because like, I'll just share a personal story real quick. So I've been working with a healer for the last probably about 6 months.
Oh, cool.
And one of his homework assignments to me was to go get a bouquet of flowers. And I'm like, this fucking guy. Like,
for myself, what?
Well, that's the first step. Yeah. The first step is I go and I buy the flowers, and you go through the register, and they're like, what'd you do?
Yeah. Why are you in trouble?
Who'd you piss off? And you're just like, no, they're actually for me. And they're like, that's kind of weird.
Yeah. More questions now.
Exactly. And so like I bought the bouquet of flowers, and he was like, Bryce, like you're fucking right angles. Like you need to figure out flow. He was trying to teach me about flow state, and I was trying to control everything. So I buy these flowers, and he's like, dude, don't just shove them in the vase with a little bit of sugar water. Like trim the stems, like try to organize the geometry and the different textures and the different colors, and like actually notice them and enjoy them. Yeah. And I was like, dude, it's a fucking waste of money. I don't want to do it. They're just going to die. They're going to go limp, and then they're going to die, and I'm going to throw them away, and I'm going to be pissed at you. Yeah. And he's like, exactly why you need to do this exercise. Yeah. So very similar to like you holding the nut and noticing like, what's the texture? What's the smell? How do I relate to this? That's very tangible, but it's also like, how does my foot strike the ground? Yeah. Are my cheeks jiggling when I'm running so I'm not so tight when I'm breathing? Can I go face cheek to butt cheek as I'm moving my arms and allowing my shoulders to stay a little bit relaxed? And it's such a beautiful practice in simply noticing. Yeah. And it's being as opposed to doing. And that's what this flower practice has taught me, is like, hey, notice, man. Like you're so fast going past everything. And it's like there's these things that you can pause, you can reflect, you can notice. And then as a byproduct of doing it externally, you start to do it internally, and you notice, hey, I'm getting tight. Let me chill. Yeah. What comes to mind when you self-reflect on like that original practice? Were you rigid like me and kind of fighting it, or did you kind of surrender?
Like, this is weird. Like, what am I doing? Can I just eat my macadamia nut? Like, but like it really forces you to slow down and, like you said, notice things. And I think so often in life and in sports, we're, caught up in something that's already happened that we have no control over, and we're just like stewing in it, or we get depressed over things that have already happened that we had no control of changing, or, we're anxious of like what's to come and what's next. And that practice of just learning how to be grounded and mindful and present and notice things around me, enjoy the moment that I'm in, is probably the thing that I'm the most grateful for as being an Olympian, professional athlete, all those things, because it filters into my life. And, the heptathlon also is, you have to have short-term memory loss in a way. There's 7 events. Like, and if you go in thinking you're going to have a perfect meet, you're setting yourself up for failure, because like, there's just so many things that can happen. And so that practice, just being able to notice where I am and be mindful and be able to focus on my breath when I start to get anxious, or have tools like that in my tool belt to allow me to stay mindful and present, I am just so grateful for. And that's honestly, I think, why I made the Olympic team. And then also in Tokyo, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't have a great meet. I almost fell in the first race. So I lost.
On the 100-meter hurdles?
Yeah, I think I came out blazing. I was leading, and then I clipped, I think, the 4th or 5th hurdle. And I lost like half a second in the hurdles, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I mean, it was like 60 points. Yeah. In track and field, it's a lot. So I think I lost like 60 points, but you actually, if you watch back, I crossed the finish line and you see me, years back, I would have been like fucking pissed. I would have been emotional, and I just took a breath and I was like, dang. And that's it. And I move on to the next thing. I went and jumped my second best high jump meet I've had all year. And I kept myself in the running. I finished 6th overall. So in years back, that would have ruined me. Like I don't even know if I would have finished the meet, because it would just been so devastating to me. And that ability to just accept what was happening in the moment and move on to the next thing that I do have control over is a tool and a skill of mine now that I will carry into every aspect of my life. So that's what I'm most grateful for.
It's so cliche to speak about on a podcast, of just like overcoming adversity and like letting go and all the sexy phrases that you see on the reels, but to actually do that in the moment, knowing that like, hey, normalcy for me is not clipping my spike on the 4th or 5th hurdle. Being able to let go of that so quickly. I mean, if I were to relate that to basketball, it's like missing 10 shots, but knowing that like your 11th one is going to go in.
You have control of the next moment. It's like your life is just moments and moments of time. And like you might mess up in one, but you have control of the next moment. You can do your best in the next. So it's honestly, it's really freeing too when you really have that ability, but it also takes so much work. Like it's a practice, right? Like and I've gone through phases since then where, I kind of fall out of my meditation at times, where I'm not as disciplined doing it every day. And I look back, those are my most anxious times that I've ever been in my life, where I just feel like I have no control and I'm freaking out. And that practice, while it takes a lot of work, is so rewarding and helps you so much in life.
And it sounds so easy, like sitting. I mean, you can listen to a guided meditation, you can practice breath work or box breathing, but just this concept of, the analogy that comes to mind is like sitting on a park bench and there's cars passing through a tunnel. You acknowledge them, you wave hello, but you don't actually have to get in the car with them. And that can be a wide variety of emotions: anger, resentment, frustration, guilt, shame, whatever that is. But just the ability to recognize and then kind of think of them as attached to like a fishing string. Just be like, okay, I see you. I'm going to cut the cord. You don't get to hang out at my table anymore.
Yeah. Or like I've had like the river analogy where, you're sitting there and your emotions are like they're in like a log in the river, they're floating by. I've had like you're standing at your door and your emotions are like your neighbors walking by, and you're just witnessing. You're just witnessing them, but they don't have a hold of you and they don't have control of you. And it's so easy to let your emotions get control of you, especially in sports when things aren't going your way, or you mess up or you fail. It's really easy to let them get a hold of you. So I think that tool and strength of being able to witness them is huge.
Free is the way to be. Life beats us up a bit and causes some bumps and bruises, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on the sidelines. This is why we've partnered with Kinyan Labs. Get back to doing what you love with this incredible portable device designed to get you back in the game. Kinyan is on a mission to move people from pain to possible with their top-rated red light therapy and laser solution, which tackles inflammation along with muscle and joint pain quickly and effectively. What I love is that it's portable and rechargeable, making it easy to actually incorporate into my everyday life consistently. It's small and lightweight, so you can throw it in your gym bag or work bag, or even an overnighter. Kinion's lasers and LED combo make this cutting-edge device extremely versatile for use with general aches and pains, as well as chronic back pain, arthritis, post-surgery recovery, endometriosis, and more. This has been an amazing tool keeping my elbows and knees pain-free for pressing, pulling, and squatting in the gym. Great tools like the Move Plus give me the freedom and flexibility to continue living life on my terms without limitations. There are a lot of reasons why over 15,000 people are using this device and rating it 4.7 stars and above. Head on over to kinion.io and use code ALLSMITH at checkout to begin your pain-free journey. I like that neighbor analogy. That's good.
Yeah, it's kind of...
Because if you even take that even further, you could relate it to like triggers. You can relate it to empaths who are like, oh, I can feel their energy. And it's just like causing this. It's like, no, it's causing that because you're granting them a permission slip to live rent free between your ears.
Yeah.
And when you think about that and like the mind games that take place in the warm up area, the looks that you're getting from girls, the posturing, maybe some people are just in their own world with headphones. They're not very friendly. And it's like, you can feel that energy.
For sure.
How have you been able to kind of navigate that a little bit when you're kind of in your own lane? You've probably got your coaches with you. You recognize the existence of your family, but you're also like observing everybody else. How do you play with like the element of comparison in the warm-up area?
I mean, comparison is really hard, I think.
Especially in social media culture.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. In life and sports and everything, comparison is the devil. It'll steal your joy. And it's really hard in sports. And that's, I think I do a pretty good job, and I have done throughout my career, of not putting focus in those areas. Like even my mental coach and I were like, okay, Instagram, you're not looking at anything any other athlete is doing. You're not looking up, because I think I used to get in the habit of like, okay, I knew there was a meet and I knew this athlete was competing there. I'm going to look up and see what they did. What is that adding to my life other than stress and anxiety? That is completely out of my control.
There's no return on investment.
There's no return. And just because they did this at that doesn't mean they're going to do it at Olympic trial. You know, it just doesn't fuel anything but anxiety. And so I think I do a really good job of protecting my peace in that way, of just focusing on what is in my control and what I can do. So like that's a very easy way. And then I think honestly, just working with my mental coach through like a schedule of like, okay, what are we going to do in the warm up? Okay. What are we going to do when you're sitting and you have 20 minutes in between throws? Like having a plan that keeps me centered on what I can do and what's in my control, that helps me a lot. So whether it's like, a lot of times I would be doing a guided meditation through my warm up. So that's all I have focus on. I don't even have time or energy to like look around and be focused on what someone else is doing, because I'm just focusing on my meditation as I warm up. This is so funny. I listen to like gospel music when I warm up. It's so funny. I'm not listening to like the ramp up badass music. I'm listening to like worship music, because that just makes me feel grounded. It makes me feel centered. It makes me remember that this is, his plan, not mine. And I can just kind of have peace in that when I warm up. So I think just knowing yourself and then putting systems in place to allow yourself to stay focused on what's in your control and not get distracted by the outside noise. And I think that my mindfulness practice really allowed me to do that. I don't think I'd be able to without it.
Two words that come to mind: versatility and well-roundedness. You need both of those things for the heptathlon.
Yeah.
For people that don't know, what are the different events of the heptathlon and how is it separated?
So the men, most people recognize the decathlon. The decathlon is 10 events over 2 days. The heptathlon is 7 events over 2 days. So it's split 4 events on day 1, which is the hurdles, the high jump, the long jump, and long jump. I can't even get the order right. I've been doing this for how long? Hurdles, high jump, shot put, 200. Okay. Day 2 is long jump, javelin, and 800. And it's based on a point system. So however far you throw, how fast you run, it's broken down to like the milliseconds, centimeters, millimeters, and you get a specific amount of points for all of those. And then they add it up at the end to figure out who wins.
Which event is your favorite?
Whichever's going well at the time. It honestly switches every year. Like hurdles has always been a favorite of mine. I've been doing that forever. Hurdles is one of my favorites. the last 2 years, which if you would have asked me this question 3 years ago, never would have been my answer, is javelin. Like, it used to be my nemesis. It was such a weakness of mine, and that really turned the corner a couple years ago, and so that became one of my favorites. And probably long jump. Those are like my top 3 the last couple of years.
It's so interesting because I listened to you on a few other podcasts, and your answer to that question was shot put at the time.
Well, probably because that's my best event.
Okay.
So shot puts, like, but I think when I think about like which one I enjoy the most, I mean, it's always fun when you're like beating people, right? But so that's my best.
The real competitive instinct is coming out.
Yeah, like that's my best event. But when I think of like which one I enjoy the most in competing, it's probably the other 3.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You grew up playing soccer.
Yeah,
And you grew up with track. Mm-hmm. Which one was your first love when you were young?
Soccer, probably. I remember, I did both from 2 and 3 years old. My mom, I'm tall for my age. I'm sitting down, but I'm 6 feet tall, and I've always been tall for my age. My brother and sister are 10 and 8.5 years older than I. So I would get dragged to their track meets, and my mom just threw me in the 50-yard dash because I was tall for my age. And I think I got a blue ribbon. I threw it on the ground because I wanted pink, which is 5th place. But so I've been in track forever, but soccer was my first love for sure. It's a team sport, and I just think there's something about like winning as a team, competing as a team. It's like built-in sisters. I still to this day, some of my best friends are my soccer girls throughout my life, in club soccer, high school soccer, college soccer. So it's just like such a bond in team sports that people don't really like get in individual sports that I love.
The locker room, the travel, the in-between, the navigating everything, especially if you're doing it young. It's like you're going through puberty together. You're now thinking about boys. You're thinking about high school and dances and reflecting on the games and all the things.
You're dying together. You're doing your fitness test just like it's a war zone, but you're getting through it together. Like it's just a really special experience.
What position did you play in soccer?
Guess. What do you think I was?
Most people would say goalie, but I cheated and listened to you. So you played forward, right?
Yeah, I was a center forward.
Which is so different with, that's usually like the super fast athlete. So it sounds like you were fast and tall.
Yeah, I was.
Which made you a weapon and a force out there.
Yeah, I was decently fast. I would say like once I got to college, I feel like everyone's a lot faster. But like through high school, I was fast. I was tall. I was, I was a center forward. I was a big target. And
did you score a lot of goals?
Yeah, I did.
Did you have like a celebration that you did or a thing?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember. Well, in college we would come up with like little celebrations that we would do. And in soccer or in high school, I was definitely a big scorer like through high school, but then you get to college and like everyone's the top scorer from where they come from. So it humbled me a lot. But yeah, I was a good scorer, I would say.
It's very cool. Soccer is such a cool sport.
It's the best. I love it. I do miss it. I don't miss practice, but I miss the games.
What made practice so difficult?
You just run so much. I'm like, why? I look back at the sports that I chose and like, what didn't I pick like golf or like, why wasn't I just like a good singer? Like the 2 sports that I picked were just so demanding and so much running and like, endurance in that is not come naturally. Like I failed my fitness test, I think 2 out of the 4 years or maybe 3 out of the 4 years of being at Texas.
Ladies and gentlemen, an Olympic heptathlete failed her fitness test.
I know. I like it's so funny because I'll like talk to people that knew me in high school and even in college, and they're like, it's just such a plot twist because I was like the lazy but talented type of athlete up until college, and then I just had to work a lot harder for like the endurance aspect and things like that. So yeah, it does not come naturally. It's definitely in my family. My dad's the same way.
Yeah, wasn't your dad an NFL football player?
Yeah, he was an NFL football player. He went to CU Boulder for football, and then
before Dion, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
And back when they were good though, it was like them, Nebraska, UT. They were like they were a top team back then, and then he went to play for the Raiders.
Oh, very cool. The Raiders
with John Madden and Stabler the Snake.
Oh my gosh, what position did he play?
He was a fullback in special teams.
Okay.
He played for 3 years, but won a Super Bowl with them, and
that's incredible.
But he's just like me, He even told me stories of like back at CU, he would they would have to do like hundreds. Their fitness stuff, and like on one of the reps, like 5 in, he would just like go into the locker room and like hide out. So I'm like, it's genetic.
I love that. Did he give you any insights or any lessons in your upbringing when you were starting to get a little bit of attention? Mm-hmm. Colleges are starting to come around, recruiting starting to happen. You're trying to be focused on play and connection with your teammates, but there's also a pressure component. There's futuristic thought patterns that creep in of like, hey, where's this going to go? What am I going to do? Who am I going to be?
Yeah. You know, my dad, I think throughout my life, he's been a role model of mine for sure, obviously with where he's been. I think him and I can relate a lot because of, we've both been professional athletes. So, you know, that's something like in my other family members, they've never experienced. So it's like something that him and I have definitely been able to relate to together. And he's got really good advice. And I look back and I feel like my parents always did such a good job of like keeping me humble and just making sure I was like grateful for my opportunities and experiences. I also look back and I feel like they were never the parents that decided for me for anything. They always asked me they put me in everything. I did tennis, I did dance, I did soccer. You know,
that explains the well-roundedness.
Yeah. And I think they wanted that for me. They didn't want to pigeonhole me into something. And then, you know, I wake up one day, I'm like, I hate this. I'm not even having fun here. So they really put me in everything and made me a very well-rounded athlete in person. And then always asked me what I wanted to do. And I've had friends, or I've heard of a lot of athletes where their parents kind of decide things for them. And I just think that it gave me my own voice. It made me really in tune with what I wanted. And even when we were going through the college experience, like they completely gave me the reins. They led me, and they gave me the resources to have opportunities, but when it came to what I wanted to do, they give me full reins. And I really appreciate that about my parents, looking back. And they've always just been so unbelievably supportive.
What's cool is it sounds like they were a sounding board and a support system that provided a little bit of a foundational structure for you, but forced you to make the decision.
Absolutely.
And I think that's fantastic as a young person to have the agency to be like, oh, wow, these people tangibly believe in me.
Yeah.
Which then allows you to carry that level of belief into every element of your life, which is really cool.
And learn how to trust yourself too, and not have other people, you know, decide for you. I think it really makes you in tune with what your wants and your needs. And I think they gave that to me at a very young age.
The epitome of that is kind of like too many cooks in the kitchen.
Totally.
When there's so many people in there and everybody's got an opinion, you're like, fuck.
And it's already overwhelming going through the collegiate recruiting process. And I mean, you're 18 years old trying to decide your life. It can be overwhelming. So I just think they always provided a space for me to talk about openly with what I wanted, and never made me feel forced into any decision.
I like that. What was your recruiting process like, and what were some of the final schools that you narrowed it down to?
Yeah, the recruiting process, it was different because I was dead set on doing both sports in college. I had done both all through high school, since I've done both since I was 2 and 3 years old, like I mentioned. And so it was a unique experience because of that. Soccer recruits a lot earlier. So they recruit around start recruiting freshman, sophomore year.
Oh, wow.
Track is a lot later, junior, senior year. So I basically would, you know, the schools that were really interested in me in soccer, I would just go and talk to their track program and be like, hey, are you interested? Would you want me here? I know it's a little early, but you know, here I am, and would you take me type thing. And my top 4 schools were Virginia Tech, Texas A&M, Florida State, and North Carolina. And North Carolina at the time was like the mecca of women's soccer. It was like if you could go to North Carolina, it's like,
it was like them in Santa Clara.
Yes. Yeah. And
my friend Kelsey Turnbow played at Santa Clara.
Oh, okay. Yeah. At that time, yeah, those were like the 2 schools you wanted to get recruited by. Santa Clara didn't have any interest in me, but North Carolina did. So as a soccer player, that was super enticing, but they almost made like no effort to let me do both, or that I'd be able to. And I think that if I would have went there, I would have and tried to do track, I probably would have sat the bench because I'm not there all the time. And that was really hard. So it was, you know, a lot of the recruiting process is like, who do you feel safe with? Who do you think is just, you know, just saying what they need to say to get you there, versus who actually means what they say and is going to follow through with it. And so
it's good that you had that thought process though at that age. It's really easy to see those shiny objects and just jump at them. Yeah.
So I'm glad I kind of had that intuition. And I think my parents helped me with that too. And so when we would go, you know, talk to college coaches for soccer, A&M was really the only school. I think Virginia Tech also would have made more of an effort to allow me to do both and not like hold it against me. But A&M was really the only school that made me really feel like they were going to let me do it. And for 4 years, not just like my freshman year. And they sat down with me. We went and met with at the time too, the soccer and track coach were really good friends. But they sat down and showed me what the day-to-day would look like. So they're like, okay, on a Monday on your recovery day for soccer, you're going to go over to track and you're going to throw javelin, shot put. in the fall. And then like when we transition out of soccer, this is how you're going to transition into indoor season and track.
Oh, that's beautiful that they had a plan for you that you could see and you could feel.
Yeah. Like they had a plan, and I could hold them accountable too. It wasn't just empty promises. So that I think was really what set me on their edge, to know that I wanted to be there, along with, I just loved A&M. I loved Aggie Network.
It's close to home too, right?
Yeah, it was closer than the other schools. It wasn't, at the time they were a Big 12 school. So which is really, I would have been in a lot of schools really close to Colorado. My sophomore year, we switched to the SEC. But so that, and then also just, they were a consistent Sweet 16 team. I wanted to be part of programs that were successful and good and I could get better at. At the time, they were a Sweet 16 team consistently. My class, actually, we were like the most talented class they've had, and we ended up qualifying for Elite 8 while we were there, or Final Four, sorry. And then the track team was coming off the triple-double, so they were national championships, men and women, for 3 years in a row, which is like, gosh. And they had Coach Pat Henry, who's like the winningest track coach in history. So to me, it was like a no-brainer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The SEC.
SEC. There's
First
nothing like it.
First thing that comes to mind is college football.
Oh, yeah. It's a good time. If you can go to A&M for a football game, go. Kyle Field is something special, let me tell you.
Did you watch the Netflix documentary on your boy Johnny Manziel?
Oh, there's a picture of me in it, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I did not approve. And I'm still, like, I have, like, a massive, like, comb over. My hair is, like, bleach blonde.
Yes.
Wearing, like,
I'm going to go watch it again now, and I'm going to screenshot it and text it to you. Yes.
Well, I had people sending it to me, and I'm like, what the heck? I did not. It was in actually our house in College Station, actually. It was we used to call it the barnyard. We'd have a lot of soccer parties there. But, yes, I did see it, and had a little cameo in there, which I don't love the picture they chose.
He was electric.
He was.
It was absolutely incredible, and it's so cool to see him. You know, he went through some peaks and valleys within life, but he's owning it, and he's very forthcoming, and he's a huge part of just college football legacy and the famous Heisman.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know what's so interesting is just this concept of, you know, we're talking about how well-rounded you are between track and friendships and soccer and wanting to do all the different flavors of life.
Yeah.
That dude epitomized that, right? Like he definitely, I think he talked about it recently on an interview. It was like Tuesdays with, you know, one team. Thursdays was always with the baseball boys.
Yeah.
Like there was a plan, and that's usually how it goes. And it usually synergizes with practice or with the season or whatnot. Yeah. But the fact that he carved out time for that, but then could still perform.
He's a freak. Like he's just a freak. And I remember like at A&M, like he blew up overnight. Like it was like we had a class together, actually, I remember. And then it was after the Alabama football game. And all of a sudden he couldn't go to class anymore because he would just get bombarded by people and fans. And so for him to just, you know, we were like 20 years old at that time, for him to just explode overnight the way he did, I honestly I kind of understand why he kind of went down the path he did a little bit. But Johnny's a great guy, and I'm really happy to see him kind of like taking control of his life again and getting healthier and things like that.
Yeah, it's cool. I really enjoy him on some of the different sports talk radios.
He's a fun guy to talk to.
He is.
He's a great guy. Yeah.
I think he gives some good insight. He's full of energy. You could also tell that like he's not sitting there walking on eggshells. He's going to tell you the way it is.
Yeah, he's a straight shooter.
Which I very much appreciate. But could you imagine if the nil was a thing back then?
The nil?
The name, image, and likeness that all of these athletes are playing with now.
Oh, no. And I think there needs to be boundaries around it because it's like, and that Johnny should be the example of that. Like
and Reggie Bush. I mean, Reggie Bush just came out that he was suing SC in college football just because they were like capitalizing so much on.
Totally.
I mean, he was crushing it at SC at the time.
Yeah, and I just think it's kind of a slippery slope. Obviously, it's great because these athletes, you know, are getting money that they can, you know, support themselves down the road and things like that. But I just think there needs to be some boundaries around it because you give these football players millions of dollars at that age, it's just bound to be a slippery slope and not end well.
Sure.
So.
I mean, it's definitely challenging if you don't have the right financial advice around.
Totally.
I think I looked it up yesterday. I think the quarterback for Colorado, Shedeur Sanders, is making upwards of $4 million a year.
Oh yeah, he drives like a Bentley.
Yeah.
I'm like, can you imagine rolling up to college class in a Bentley? Like, it's just, to me, we talk about staying grounded and humbled, and I don't know. I don't know if I love it.
But also, there's the other side of that, which is pressure is a privilege, but pressure can also bust a pipe.
Yeah.
Pressure can also make a diamond.
Yeah.
And so when you look at this, it's like, cool, you're making this money, you're doing the thing, but it's like, if you're also not performing, the public scrutiny that comes with that when you're on that level can be demoralizing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Especially for a 20-year-old. Maybe they don't have the mental coaches. Maybe they don't have the tools to meditate or sauna and ice and integrate certain things.
Yeah, and a lot of them probably don't. I don't know how it's changed since we really were just starting to get like a sports psych like my senior year, I think, in soccer, but we didn't have one for track. So like like you said, I don't think a lot of them have the tools to deal with all of that pressure and spotlight on them and money.
No, totally. I think mental health's really floated to the surface a little bit for the positive and the negative.
Yeah.
There's peaks and valleys associated with it. But at that time, I joked with my brother over the weekend. I was like, man, I think I died like 4 or 5 times, and our parents were just like, yeah, stand up, go tough it out. You're freaking fine. Same. I'm like, you probably had 7 concussions trying to be like a BMX rider back in the day.
Totally.
Or trying to mimic like Brink from the Disney Channel.
Yeah, oh, great movie.
Have you seen that? The rollerblading movie? I just watched it the other day for the first time in a long time. I was like, man, that was an awesome movie.
Good times, yeah.
Disney. But even jumping in, like thinking about like, that's the closest thing I think, like the young Disney success. Some of these kids become these movie stars overnight. Yeah. And it's like, how do they navigate that? No wonder why there's integration of drugs and like all the different things to cope with anxiety and depression and frustration.
Identity crisis, all that. Yeah.
For sure. And also just, there's so much pressure to be the person that you are on camera. It's like, you're a human experience. You're navigating lack of sleep sometimes. You're frustrated. Maybe you got a triggering text or email or whatever the thing is, and they don't hold space for you to be a human. Yeah. And I see the same correlation into that of a professional athlete. I mean, I listen all the time about like LeBron. Everybody's hating on him. Like, guys, they just played in LA last night. They did an all-nighter to travel. Yeah. And like, yeah, he's got tools in his toolbox for recovery and makes a lot of money, but at the end of the day, he's still a human being.
Yeah.
Like food's going to change. There's altitude. There's, you know, swelling of the joint tissues when you're flying.
There's factors. He's getting older. He's human.
All the things. And it's like, it's a business. So it's not just basketball.
Yeah.
There's also media, management of teammates, talking to your coaches. There's systems behind the scenes. There's all the sponsor pressure that you have.
There's so many layers to it.
For sure. Do those things land on your radar? All the other things outside of just your sport?
I think that if you would ask me that before Tokyo, no. I think that was actually a lot of the pressure that I felt this last Olympic cycle, because I did have sponsorships and I had endorsements, and I think I put pressure on myself to not let those people down, and like, well, they're paying me now. So like, I got to, and it kind of gets blurry where it's like, am I doing this for me? Am I doing this for them? Like, I just think it added a lot of pressure on my shoulders to make the Olympic team, you know, not just for myself, but for, you know, the people that are investing in me, because it is a business and they are paying me to do this now. And that was something that I had never experienced before. So it was definitely like a learning curve, I think, a little bit. And I look back and like all the sponsors that I've had are like so unbelievably supportive. Like they never put any pressure on me. It was me putting it on myself. But I think
it's still the ideological concept of like, they're making an investment.
Yeah.
I either have to perform or I have to provide an ROI.
Yeah.
And it's this, whether it's from the sponsor or not, for a high performing individual, it's this little dial of like a little bit more distraction from your headspace in comparison to before, when it was just like, I do it for the love of the sport. Totally. I want to do the thing.
Totally. It's like you're there because you're proud, and especially track and field. Like you're not making a lot of money in track and field, even if you do have sponsorships, especially as like a heptathlete, there's just not as much exposure. So like, I was just so grateful to even have support and you know, it allowed me this last 3 years to fully dive into my sport and not have distractions because I could afford it. And, you know, I had like a part-time job before that and was like working in the morning and then going to practice and then working when I get home at night. I was just like exhausted. So to have the financial support allowed me to fully be focused 100% into my goals and my dreams. But with that, it also comes with some pressure of living up to the expectation that they might have for you, which especially on an Olympic year is making the Olympic team. So it's like when you don't, you know, you're like, oh God, I let them down. And that can be heavy to deal with.
For sure. What was it like early on when you did have the part-time job and you were not sure, you're kind of scraping gum off the floor to like be able to feed yourself, to be able to pay rent, to be able to manage paying for recovery.
Yeah, like extreme couponing for groceries.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it was tough. I remember, you work random part-time jobs that can function with your full-time sport, and especially with the heptathlon, like our hours are longer out on the track. We're out there all day. It'd be different if I was just doing one event. But your time is super limited. So I did, I think, eyelash extensions out of my apartment at one point. I was walking dogs at one point, which I'd be so tired from practice. I'd just be like sitting on just like walk them kind of far, sit at a park. I remember I was like a fitness health coach for a little bit. That was my most recent one before I got my sponsorship. And that was super tough because, I'm sitting at a desk on my computer, my back is hurting. It's just like ergonomically not great for training. And yeah, it just took away from my training in general. So it's really hard, but there are so many track athletes that that's your only option. Like if you don't have sponsors, if you don't have endorsements, like the funding that we get from USA Track and Field is like $12,000 for the year. And you have to be in the top 15 in the world to even get that funding. So there's like, 100 of us that even get $12,000 a year in like health insurance, which is great, but it's not enough to live in San Diego, California, which is one of the most expensive places to live now.
Totally.
So, a lot of the people at the training center that I train at are working part-time jobs or coaching on the side. You're on your feet longer. I've known people that like are bartending. And so it's just an aspect that, when you see the Olympics and the glory of it all, and you see these like quick highlight reels of people at the Olympics, you think, oh my God, they must be making so much money. And it's like, no, they're scraping by, especially in sports like track and field, where people only care about it really for every 4 years. So it's not ideal, but it's sadly a fact of, a reality of a lot of athletes that are training professionally.
No, it's very well said. People always remember like the highlight reel, right? And like the highlight reel is maybe 2 minutes or 60 seconds, but they forget that like the making of the highlight reel is years. And so much of life isn't that. It's actually lived within the mundane.
Yeah.
Right? It's what are your habits? What do you do first thing in the morning? What's your morning routine? How do you get yourself going? What does your food look like?
Yeah, so dialed.
How do you navigate your headspace? Like what is travel to the location that you're training? Like, is it really far? Is it close? What's the communication strategy? What's your nutrition, not just from a food and drink standpoint, but what's integrating your headspace? What are you listening to? Yeah. Who's within your network? Who wants to hang out when you're not really that available all the time, right? Like you've got family and you've got the friends that are like, hey, you don't get to see them that often, but when you do chat with them, it's like you pick up right where they left off. Yeah. They're not high maintenance of like, why didn't you text me back? Or why didn't you respond to my DM? It's like, I probably didn't see it. Yeah. I was too busy living and doing the thing. Yeah. So there's all these different variables that associate with like getting it as a professional athlete, and some do. Yeah. And some don't. And it's like, then there's a grieving process because you're like, man, like it's kind of a lonely journey. Yeah. It's the hero's journey.
For sure.
And it doesn't have to be that, but like we talk about in entrepreneurship, everybody has to go through the lonely chapter where it's like in the beginning, everybody's like your fan because you're taking the leap, you're doing the thing that lights your heart on fire, and everybody's like,
settles and
then it's kind of like losing a family member. Everybody's there right when they pass, but that's not really when you start to grieve. It's like over the course of time. So like what you said, the dust starts to settle, and then you sit there for a moment. You're like, oh, this is where the learning takes place. This is where all those tools are actually more valuable that I didn't realize I was going to need until later. Yeah, and that's what I think about in relation to being a professional athlete. It's like, it's not really about the moment when the cameras and the lights are on. Yeah. It's about all the things that nobody watched. Who were you and what were your habits when nobody was watching? Around. Yeah. And that's really the story that should be the highlight reel.
Totally. And that's kind of the podcast. What defines you as a person and as an athlete are those moments that no one's watching, and what are you doing behind the scenes?
How do you hold yourself accountable in those moments? Right? When you get those little triggers of like, hey, I don't want to think right now. I just want to have the drink. Or,
I know it's hard.
I want to stay up later. I want to not eat that. I'd rather eat that. Like,
yeah. I think I've always kind of had that innate drive within me since from a very young age. But I think that transition into becoming a professional athlete is when that stuff that you just mentioned is the difference. And it took me a little bit to figure that out because
in college you got the text from the coaches. They're kind of refining you and putting you in the right lane.
Oh, they do everything for you.
Your whole schedule is dialed.
Yeah, it's regimented. They like take care of your travel, their hotels. Everything is taken care of for you. And then when you transition into, especially in my sport, track and field professionally, where there's not a lot of opportunity and, funding, all of that. So it's not all taken care of for you. It's all on you. And that learning curve.
Travel and stuff too.
Yeah. Well, luckily, so I was at the Olympic Training Center, thankfully, and but it's a small group of us. There was 30 when I think I joined, and they would help with 5 domestic meets, I think, for the year. But a lot of it is just on your own. And, things that you can get away with in college, you couldn't get away with at the professional level. And I think nutrition was a huge thing. And then my mental coaching, those were the things that were a huge shift that I had to learn that made the difference for me. But I've always been really driven, but I turned I think once I saw the effects of when you take care of your nutrition, when you take care of your mental, what that does for your performance, it's addicting. I'm okay, this shit works. So for me, it wasn't that hard because I knew
it created buy-in right off the bat.
Yeah. I'm okay, if I do these things, I know there's going to be payoff. I know I'm going to get the best out of myself and I'm going to get my body to optimal performance. And that's what's going to get me to my goal. So that I think has always been what motivated me to stay diligent and disciplined and sacrifice when I needed to.
Have you ever experienced the other side of, I'm doing the right thing, I'm eating well, I'm taking care of myself. Mm-hmm. Why am I so full of anxiety? Why is my knee hurting? Or the little tweaks that kind of pop up? Or why is my time not getting better? And just going to your coach being we need to change something. It's not working.
Constantly. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it goes in waves. There'll be times, and that's when you have to sit with your coach and evaluate. And I always keep a journal, a practice journal, so that I know hey, this is what we were doing when things were going great. This is what we're doing now. We're not getting the numbers we need. We need to change the strength training, whatever. And I think, keeping a detailed log of all of that has really helped me because there's always going to be times where, you feel like you're doing everything right. I think even just when I transitioned out of college, I was thinking that I was eating everything healthy and right. And then when I finally found my metabolic practitioner coach that helped me change my life, I realized I wasn't doing those things. So it's always about learning and surrounding yourself with people that are experts in their field so that you can soak up that knowledge and become the best version of yourself. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, it absolutely does. And then also jumping into there's another layer, especially to women's sports. There's a sexual component. There's an image to live up to. I need to look the certain way. I want to look the part.
Yeah.
And then, food plays a role in that. Training plays a role in that. Sleep, stress, hormone cycles play a role in that. How have you navigated some of those things as you've matured as a woman working with somebody that is a nutrition expert to kind of steer the ship a little bit?
Yeah, that's huge. I think especially as female athletes, you talked about comparison earlier. There is so much comparison. We run in basically our underwear. So there's a lot of opportunity to compare yourself to others and feel insecure or, especially when you feel like you're doing everything right, but you don't look a certain way. And especially in a sport like track and field where it comes down to milliseconds, your body fat percentage and muscle mass and that ratio is really important to your performance. So that's even another layer of it instead of just wanting to look a certain way. It's really coming down to your performance. So I struggled with that a lot, even through college. I think, you get into college, your metabolism slows down. I was a beanpole in high school. So I kind of went through that curve where I even had a track coach one time tell me yeah, if you lost 5 pounds, you'd be great. And so that psyche
that hits you in your headspace.
It really hits you. And I think sometimes, male coaches don't have the tactfulness with women and female athletes, especially at that age. He meant no harm by that, but it stuck with me for a long time. And then it kind of associates food. You associate food in more of a toxic, not healthy way. And I think I just didn't know how to fuel myself properly. And that really didn't change until 2019. And I think I struggled with that. After I got hurt, my first year I was a professional athlete. I ruptured my plantar fascia. It's been my struggle as an athlete. But I was out for 6 months and I was drinking a little bit more because I wasn't competing and things like that. But I probably gained 10 pounds, I think, in that time. So coming back from that injury was so hard because I felt like I was doing all the right things and I wasn't. And it wasn't until I met Cynthia, my metabolic practitioner, that she really taught me how to fuel myself. Like, food is fuel. And that's how I looked at it as an athlete. And it wasn't something that I was fixated on anymore, because she was teaching me how to eat more protein. And then I was full longer, and I'm eating the right snacks, and I'm eating the right thing at breakfast so that I can sustain energy through practice, and the supplements to balance all my hormones and whatever I'm deficient in. So it truly changed my life, if I'm being honest.
It sounds like you're very coachable, that when you find somebody that is the leader, the expert, and they give you a protocol, you're willing to surrender to that protocol. And then throughout the course of action, you're not afraid to give feedback, and you guys start playing kind of ping pong together based on the generalized blueprint that they use to steer the ship.
Yeah. I would say if you ask a lot of my coaches in the past, I'm pretty coachable.
That's great. How have you been able to do that based on like high level success since you were really young? Because it's very easy to be like, cool,
I got it.
I get you're a metabolic expert, but like I've done it this way for this long and I got to this level and you've never done it my way. So like, how have you really surrendered the ego there to absorb that knowledge?
I mean, it's all ego, right? And I think when you think you know better or know everything, then you know nothing at all. So I've really challenged myself to surround myself by people that are kind of, like I said, experts in their field, and soak up as much information as I can. And then once I've bought in fully to what they're telling me to do, if there's things that intuitively I'm feeling, I know my body, I know myself as an athlete, that I'm grappling with or whatever, then it's a conversation to talk about. And I think I started finding my voice a little bit more in that later in my career, especially, you've been a professional athlete for X amount of years, you start figuring out what works for you. And there were things even like with my coach, like I would sit down and he would send me the month plan or whatever. And then Tuesday he's like, all right, what do you want to talk about? What do what do you think isn't going to work? But it's always a conversation, right? So then if I had an idea, he would take that in, and does it align with what he's wanting to do? Does it not? And then we have that conversation and come up with a plan that we both feel comfortable with.
I love hearing that, just because sometimes you hear the dictator coach. It's like, I spent all this time building out the plan for, if you don't want to do it, like, fuck off.
Well, there's a lot of ego and pride in coaching.
100%.
And I think it's hard for coaches sometimes to let go of that and really take in what their athletes are telling them.
But you said the line that was so perfect. You know your body better than anyone else.
Yeah.
You're you. If I was your coach, I'm not you. And so like, you're giving me the answers to the test by sharing, this is how I feel. We're using comparative analysis in our journaling and documentation to be like, okay, you're right. Like you saw something that maybe I didn't see.
Yeah.
But you also can't do it by yourself. So being able to like bounce those ideas off, have some coaching talk therapy.
Yeah.
Feel supported in that role. It is a collaboration.
Yeah. It is, especially at that level, and especially in track and field when it's an individual sport. I think it's more of a collaboration and a partnership with your coach more than anything.
Yeah, I think that's so special. I like the way you said that, just because sometimes I think the role of coach is like, just tell me what to do. And then sometimes it's like the coach is like, I'm looking for information to, have inputs to then derive the outputs.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the athlete is like, I'm not feeling heard. I'm not feeling seen. And I think when you find that safe space, most problems in relationships, coaching, professional, intimate, can be solved with a fucking conversation.
And like, it is a balance, and you never, like I said, you never want to think you know better than anyone, but you also don't want a coach that's just a dictator. That's just, you do what I say and that's it. So I was really grateful for, my career with my coach, because I feel like it evolved so much where we really did have a great partnership, and it felt collaborative, and it felt like I was being heard, and it felt like I respected him and his wants and plan for me. So I think when you find that balance, that's the sweet spot for success.
I love that. Plantar fascia, yo.
That damn plantar fascia.
We talked
my nemesis.
Yeah, we talked a little bit offline. It's definitely an injury that I've battled as well.
You can relate.
Tim Duncan from the NBA battled it throughout his career when playing for the Spurs.
Players.
Yeah, jumpers.
Yeah.
Taller athletes. Sure. And man, it sucks. For people that don't know, plantar fasciitis. Plantar fascia is kind of the sheath of tissue at the base of your foot through your arch and kind of is connective through the calf muscle.
Up to your toe.
Yeah. And man, it's frustrating because there's not always like a visual, right? But
I always feel like when you flex your foot, it's
Yeah.
that rigid line when you're flexing. Like mine is gone right now. It's just mush.
Oh, that's brutal. And you walked in here just like with a pep in your step.
Yeah, I can walk good. It's just like jumping, sprinting, and things like that right now that I can't do yet.
Yeah. It affects everything. And it's also something that kind of aches when you're doing nothing.
And it lingers for so long.
Yeah.
Like it's,
I'm glad we were able to kind of paint that picture for people. But
The Trident family taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the Sweet Cream Cold Brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level.
what's that been like? When did you have the first injury within your career? And it's something that doesn't just go away. It kind of comes back and forth. Sometimes it's biomechanical.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just an inflammatory trigger. But man, like your feet are the foundation of everything that you do.
Oh my God, especially as a track athlete, like your feet are the moneymaker, right? Like, so, so my first plantar fascia issue was in 2017 on my left one. I ruptured it hurdling in like my second meet of the year, first year as a professional athlete. And so that was like a 6 to 8 month process to get back from that one, but it ruptured completely. And then since then, I haven't had any pain until 2 weeks before trials on my left one.
Brutal.
My right one, I injured in 2022. And I think that was a result of, me looking back, not being a smart athlete and giving my body the appropriate amount of time to heal and recover from such a demanding year, the Olympic season. I came back from Tokyo so motivated and so excited. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to win a fucking medal. Like, let's do this. And I think I took off like 9 days. It was like less than 10 days of like just no working out, just relaxing until I was like jumping in F45. I was going on runs by myself. I'm like, I want to come in really fit. And so I think that was, my body just started breaking down very early in the season. And I got a partial tear, I think in February of 2022. That took me out for the entire 2022 season.
And for people that don't know, a partial tear is worse.
It's so much worse.
Because
if you have a plantar fascia tear, just go run until it pops. Like truly, like that is my advice to you. And that's such an old school mentality. And I even had people tell me that when I had my partial. I was like, you're crazy. Like I'm not, that sounds awful. What are you talking about?
Over the course of time when I was battling it, I remember going into the training room after practice and I'd lie on my stomach and I'd buy like a towel. Yeah, and they'd use Graston on your foot. And I just remember like after doing that for like months on end, being like, let's just cut it.
Literally. Like,
let's just cut it. Like this hurts so bad. And like, it doesn't really feel better after we do the Graston, but I know we're trying and this is the protocol at the time. We're doing ultrasound. We're doing acupuncture. We're doing, I mean, I was like a monkey. I was grabbing marbles, putting them into a box, the towel rolls. You're trying everything. Eccentric
loading, all of it.
Totally. And it's just there. And that walk from the bed to the bathroom in the morning, you're like, how am I so young?
I know, when I'm hobbling to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And then I remember like taking off my spikes or like shoes at the end of the day. It was just like awful. It just lingers for so long.
Yeah, I empathize a lot for this. What are some of the other protocols that you've done to treat it?
I mean, everything that you mentioned, acupuncture, I did a lot of dry needling. I did, manual therapy, eccentric loading was a lot of my rehab. Like a lot of the, with plantar fascia, you actually want to load it. That's kind of like the rehab instead of like taking time off or anything.
Taking time off is worse because like your feet end up doing this to try to give it a little bit more space. So even like sleeping in the boot.
I slept in the boot. Yeah. It keeps your butt
sucks.
So annoying. Yeah. You keep it in flexion.
I used to like subconsciously in my sleep, like unvelcro that thing and like throw it across the room. And I'm like, gosh,
not easy to sleep in. I did like Chinese medicine stuff. I did like Eastern medicine, Western medicine. I honestly have tried it all.
And it's usually people with high arches or flat feet that get it.
So I have super high arches.
Me too.
And I think that's what made me more susceptible to them throughout my career. And you're in spikes, obviously, all the time.
Pseudo casts for your feet.
And there's no, like, you can't really put arch support in your spikes. There's no room for them. I have 7 different kinds of spikes. So I remember even like 2022 is when I had the partial tear. I sat out the season, but you know, coming back from it, I was like sprinting in the grass in my tennis shoes until like January. You just have to like kind of put systems in place so that your foot doesn't break down.
Something that I felt that helped a lot and didn't, obviously you have to wait till the tissue heals and the inflammation goes away, but the sand was really helpful.
Sand, yes.
Being able to be like really dexterous. Like I got to the point where it was sand walks, sand light jogs, but then I was like spike ball. And then started playing like beach volleyball at like a poor man's level. But like just being able to play and change direction and get different angles on the feet.
Muscles,
yeah, for sure. And there's a famous sand dune in Manhattan Beach that we used to run.
Oh, cool. That sounds hard.
Oh, man.
Yeah, sand running is hard.
I think that's like a secret weapon for athletes is the sand.
Yeah. And that honestly, our coach integrated a lot more sand, like walks and things like that to end practice with. And
it also doesn't put like a ton of bulk or muscle on you. That's going to be heavy when you're trying to be, at least in basketball and track, you're trying to be really fast and agile and change speed, change direction. And like, it doesn't always help being in the weight room and trying to put on a ton of muscle.
Yeah, for sure. So I hurt that in 2022. And then this last season, I hadn't had any pain in my foot. I was healthy all season. Trained the way I wanted to train. It took like 1.5 years for my right one to stop having pain finally, because it was a partial and just took forever to heal. But 2 weeks before trials, all of a sudden, it honestly like happened overnight. It was so weird. I just had pain in that spot. And it's like a trauma response when you've had like an injury that you've dealt with for a long time. Like, you know that pain, you know that spot.
You almost tighten up, like seriously.
Totally.
I've been doing everything right.
Absolutely. And that happened to me. I remember I started having pain after a meet. I took my spikes off. I was kind of limping around and my boyfriend was over my feet. He like barely even touched that spot. And I like yelped and cried. And, and then that Monday practice, I went, I tried to warm up. I'm like, okay, it's fine. You're like trying to talk yourself out. You're like, no, it's just like, it's just tight or whatever. I went to do high jump practice. I took one pop off. I didn't even do like a jump and went into the pit, knew it was that spot, and just started like crying. More, not because of the pain, more of like, fuck, I'm 2 weeks from trials, and that is my plantar fascia. Like, you've got to be kidding me. So dealt with that. I got in the pool basically from that day up until I was at Olympic trials. I had like one day out on the track to do like a warm up. And even then I could feel it pulling. Like when I didn't even do like, I did like a baby jog and then I like threw shot put and I could just feel it pulling. But
it's distraction for your headspace.
Well, honestly, like I look back and that's probably just years of the training that I've had where I actually felt more mentally strong like the week and a half leading to trials than I felt all season. And I don't know if it was just illusion or what.
Hey, whatever it was. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, but I bought into the pool. I was killing myself in the pool. It was visualizing more than I've ever visualized. I looked even at the research of like anaerobic fitness and how you can keep it in the pool. And so I don't know. I was just bought in. I feel like my faith was my foundation too, where I just like trusted God's plan and everything. But going into trials, I was freaking mentally so strong. But my body it didn't hold on. And I was in the warm up literally like 2 or 3 minutes before they pull us under the tunnel to get called back before they start the races. And it was my last warm up rep over the hurdles. And I felt it pop and I fell down and crashed and started crying and then realized I don't have time to cry because I'm pulling us back here. I went over to my coach and he was like, you know what it feels like, just fucking go for it. And I was like, okay, I can do this. It's truly one of like the most heartbreaking moments of my career for sure.
Did you end up running the race?
I did. And I think I was like the 4th or 5th heat of the hurdles, which I almost wish I would have heard it like during the race because that time in between was really just like, it's like a you know, my left side of my shoulder is like, you can fucking do this. Let's go for it. Like, mind over matter. You're fine. And then the other side of me is like, the reality of the situation is like, I think I just tore my plantar fascia and I haven't even started the Olympic trials. How the hell am I going to get through this? And then like taking the time to just like soak it in. And like, I remember I walked up to the stadium and I just like took a minute to like look at the lights, look at my family, look at the track, and just like really be there and soak it in. Cause I think I knew this could potentially be my last race. Like, I don't know how I'm going to even get through this. And I got through the race. My coach actually thinks I like partially tore it in the warm up. And then, cause I got through like the first 4 hurdles decently. And then it started to break down. So he thinks I might've like fully ruptured it like halfway through the race. And I think I ran like a second slower, crossed the line and just kind of got flooded with emotion of what the hell just happened. I can't believe this. And they took me under and ultrasounded it and told me that it was torn and I wouldn't be able to compete. And, then I had to go sit in the stands and watch the Olympic trials with my family, which thank God they were there, because I don't know how I would have gone through it without them. But it was pretty torturous watching the trials in you know, the seats where my family was at, where I'm supposed to be down on the track competing. So it was definitely a emotional roller coaster, to say the least.
Now in hindsight, looking back to that moment, was it lighting a fire in your belly and in your heart and in your soul of like, I'm going to make it back and I'm going to be out there with those people?
Yeah, you know, I think it's tough because I was going to retire after Paris. So I think I've been on that acceptance of like, okay, this is my last season. I'm going to give everything I got. And I just didn't predict it to happen the way that it did. Especially
because it was smooth sailing right up until.
And finally, because I felt like the 2 years before that were just constant adversity with, you know, injuries and having a job and things like that. So it was the 2 years leading up to that. I was like, finally, I'm healthy and I can train the way I want to. And I took that for granted earlier in my career, just being healthy at the right time. And that's, you know, especially as you know, at the Olympic trials, that's 90% of the battle. It's just being healthy and being able to compete the way you want to. So I think leading into, you know, this Paris and Olympic year, I was, you know, this is my last year. I'm going to be grateful for every second, and I'm finally able to train the way I want to. So I was going to retire after Paris. And then for it to happen the way that it did, I think it leaves, you know, inside of you just the what if. And, you know, I never got to even show where I was at, really. I was feeling better physically than I had ever felt all year. And I felt ready to put up a big number. And I felt like we fixed my speed. Everything was kind of coming together. So I think that lingers inside me of like, well, I never got to show what I was ready to do. And I really did feel like I could be in the mix to win a medal. And so that kind of lingers within me for sure, of like never getting the opportunity to even try. Like, I didn't expect that. I thought, if I try and give it everything I got and I still get 4th, I don't make the team, at least I know I gave it everything I have. And I just wasn't the best that day. When you get when the opportunity gets ripped away from you the way that it did for me, it was just completely out of my control. It makes you sit there a little bit and be like, okay, well, am I done? Do I want to try to give it another go? So I'm taking it day by day right now. I don't really know if I have an answer, if I am going to keep going or I'm not right now, but I'm just trying to get healthy. Just take it day by day.
I like that answer, and knowing that like you can do both. You can take it day by day, and you can choose to eventually participate. You can also choose to move on. And the other thing that's great about what you just described is there's so many transferable skills. So much of life is day by day. We don't have all this figured out.
All you have is right now.
Totally. And also the other thing that I think is a great transferable skill for you is just like the willingness to realize that you have a team. Success is absolutely in the agency of others, and you have to have, a village, like you said.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot to unpack with that, and realizing that you don't have to do it all by yourself, because you're going to have things that you're really good at, and then you obviously need to learn to delegate, and sometimes you're the bottleneck. You just need to get out of the way.
Yeah, totally.
For sure. Something that's been popping up is the best ability is availability. What's something that comes to mind? I know we talked loosely about the hyperbaric chamber. But we kind of talked a little bit about nutrition and fueling your body, but what have kind of been the specifics that maybe people listening can add into their day-to-day to optimize, decrease inflammation, and be able to like really get on a path towards optimal performance?
Oh gosh, if you have the opportunity to get in a hyperbaric chamber like that, that I was in there for 30 days, for like almost 4 hours a day, pretty much 5 or 6 days a week, I think I was doing. So
what does that do?
So it's really good for your red blood cells. And it's like, if you have chronic disease, autoimmune disease, if you have like Alzheimer's, dementia, it's supposed to be so healing for all of those things, for inflammation. And I really think that it just allowed my body to heal so much faster from my plantar fascia tear. Like I thought, when I ruptured it last time, I was in like a boot for a long time, and then I was in crutches. And this time, once the initial inflammation calmed down, I was able to walk without a boot and crutches. So I'm like, oh my God, this is healing so much faster than it did before. And I really think it's the result of being in the hyperbaric as much as I was. And then obviously, the fueling stuff I'm so passionate about. I would highly recommend. The thing that I've learned too is everyone is so different. Oh, yeah. There is not a one size fits all. And I feel like there's so many fads and like diets and whatever that is like a one size fits all for everyone. And that is not. Everyone is so complex, especially women, our hormones, how we metabolize carbs, what things we're deficient in, what our imbalances are. Everyone is so different. And so if you can get like a functional medicine doctor or like my nutritionist, metabolic practitioner, where they really look at you as a whole, they get your blood work, they figure out what you're deficient in, they find out where your hormone imbalances are, and then put you on supplements that are going to balance you out. That is huge.
That's cool.
That's huge. That made a big difference for me. And then the nutrition aspect, the biggest thing that I changed is, upping my protein for sure. I eat like way more protein. And the thing in the morning, I don't ever eat the same thing every day because that causes inflammation. So a lot of bodybuilders and things that they're eating like chicken, rice, and vegetable every single meal or whatever. You want to mix it up. So you want to have one morning I'll have protein, like a steak or salmon or a chicken thigh with macadamia nuts and like raspberries. Okay, then the next day I'm going to have a different protein, and then I'm going to have like some almonds and then some blackberries. So it's different versions of the same thing.
Changing it up for your gut microbiome, like different protein sources, different amino acid profiles, different fat profiles, but then also kind of eating the rainbow a little bit. So that way your gut flora is getting a wide array of different types of bacteria to manage the inflammation for sure.
And there's even just things like, a lot of people wake up first thing, they have their coffee. Well, you need to line your gut with something first. So making sure that first bite of food is protein for your day. And then just, cutting out a lot of people eat oats. Oats are not good for you. Like I'm here to tell you, like especially in the morning, they're going to spike your cortisol. And so there's just a lot of things out there that I think people think are healthy and they aren't. So really finding like a functional medicine nutritionist type of doctor that really will focus on getting your metabolic system in order is probably the best thing you can do for yourself.
I like the way you describe that too. And I'm sure there's some variants. Like I know some CrossFit athletes rely heavily on oats just because there is chronic cardio kind of in their sport. And they are relying heavily on just that like type 2 muscle fiber anaerobic system. However, protein and fat in the morning is usually what I've seen to be the best with a low glycemic fruit.
Yes.
Because it manages the inflammation, doesn't create a huge insulin spike. Because first thing in the morning, what wakes us up besides the light? It's cortisol.
Cortisol, yeah.
Well, the inverse to that is what? Insulin. If you're getting oats or something sugary or a ton of sugar and stuff in coffee, well, now you're spiking the insulin, bringing down the cortisol. Well, why are you tired at 10 a.m.?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I love that you said that. That is very much in alignment with kind of like a primal style of consuming
it's like
and living.
Caveman diet type of thing and it's like you can still have your carbs, but make sure they're like colored potatoes instead of like rice or grains and things like that. That's the best thing that's helped me. But it's really just anti-inflammation diet is kind of what I follow, and just high protein, high fat, like you said. It's going to really help your energy.
Using the carbs, like post workout, when your cortisol is high and you're trying to actually bring it down. Yeah. Now we do want an insulin spike post workout to optimize recovery. And it's okay to be a little bit sleepy post workout if you're getting that insulin spike, because you did just do the biggest fight of the day or the main event of the day. Yeah.
And then using supplements to help also to recover and things like that. Like Cynthia, she's my metabolic practitioner. She told me, have your protein shake with glutamine and glycine. It's like a product I use. It's called Glutamed. Within an hour of finishing your workout, because that's going to act as like natural testosterone. You're eating steak in the morning of a meat and during a meat because it has natural creatine in it, and that's going to boost your testosterone as well naturally. So there's little tools and tricks like that with how you fuel. And what I learned is, you know, there's a lot of foods out there that you think that have been told that are healthy that really aren't. And then it's really about like how you're eating and when you're eating certain things so that you can stay fueled and sustain energy throughout your workouts.
No, it's very well said. And the body's kind of keeping the score. So pay attention to digestion, pay attention to sleep, inflammatory markers, like what's my skin looking like?
Probiotic, fiber, like magnesium, like 90% of the population is probably deficient in magnesium. And I know it's talked a lot more now. I'm glad that this stuff is being talked about a lot more because
Thank you, Dr. Andrew Huberman.
Yeah, exactly. Because it really does make such a difference. And I think a lot of that knowledge is starting to get spread out there, especially with like the chronic disease epidemic and all of that thing. So much about it is metabolics. And so I'm just grateful that I've been taught the right tools.
You mentioned a lot in the beginning of our conversation around this word identity. And now with the uncertainty of your future within the sport and wanting to surrender to being a human, allow yourself to heal. You know, I've listened to you speak. There's a lot of things that were missed. Weddings, parties, vacations, eating certain things, doing certain things. And, you know, I'm not going to speak for you, but I'll speak for myself. Right around 30, 32, I felt my brain chemistry starting to change, where it was like, I had all this validation on performance for a very long time. Now I'm having a little bit more connection to experience.
Yeah.
I'm slowing down. I'm not as married to my times and workouts or the weight on the bar. I love that as I'm sitting here talking, I'm not playing with my knee because I used to have like knee or hip pain, like long drives or long conversations. You know, I'd tinker with little things that like they mattered at the time. And I was like, oh, that's just the way it's supposed to be. It's been deconstruction of ego. My performance is not what it once was. But it's also just like my interests have changed. Now my headspace and my spiritual fitness and my business fitness is so much sharper versus before it was like, oh, so much physical fitness.
Yeah.
And that does start to change over the course of time as headspace changes, relationships change, and life happens.
Yeah.
But where are you at in relation to that, and how does that relate to your current identity?
Yeah, I think you know, kind of what you mentioned earlier about being like a well-rounded person and athlete. I think I was that for a big part of my life. You know, in high school, I didn't miss homecomings. I was still a kid, but I was doing sports. And I think as you continue to get further and further along into your journey as an athlete, you know, you're in high school. Okay, well, it's a lot of achievement-based things, right? So you're get a full ride scholarship. Okay, now go pro, be a professional athlete. Okay, now be an Olympian. Okay, like go win a medal. So I feel like throughout your career, you learn that you're just chasing achievement. And so I've had to kind of rewire that in the last few years because I think you start to realize you're heading towards the end of your career and this journey is going to be over. And then what are you left with? And so I've really put a lot of time, you know, in therapy, just sitting with myself, trying to make plans for, you know, my life after track, and figuring out, you know, what do I even enjoy? That's not my sport. And this season, I think, is the perfect example of that. I think God put me through a lot of experiences that forced me to look at those things. And so when I did get injured the way that I did, I feel like it hasn't been as obviously it was heartbreaking and I was devastated, but it hasn't been as painful and hard these last couple months as I expected it to be. And I think it's because I put so much work into who am I outside of my sport. And that's like the biggest advice I think I can give to athletes, because this time in our life, while it feels like, you know, it's like the biggest thing in our lives and it's, you know, it sometimes you're like, oh, I'm like so tired, but it goes by so fast. And when you really look at the grand scheme of your life, it's a really small portion of your life. So really focusing on your identity outside of your sport, I think is the biggest thing that you can do for yourself because you never know when it's going to be over. You could get a season injuring, a career ending injury at any moment. Things in your life could change and at any moment. So you just have to be prepared for that and really know who you are outside of it.
I love the way you said that. There's a thought exercise that I've been challenged to do before. I won't make you do it today, but I'll say it for people. Mm-hmm. Who am I? Because I am. Everything after that mm-hmm. represents your entire life. Mm-hmm. And I think when you say I am this athlete, or I am this achievement person, or I am this occupation.
Yeah.
It's this title that maybe represents a portion of you.
Mm-hmm.
But as you described earlier, we are complex human beings navigating this human experience on this floating rock that we don't really know why we're here.
Yeah.
We kind of claim to. We seem to have some answers. Some are scientific, some are opinionated. But we don't really know.
Yeah.
And the explorative component, I think, is really beautiful. And maybe it's masked or not thought about as much when you're in pursuit and you're so focused and narrow in that lane.
Mm-hmm.
But as you start seeing the end of that, so many people are like, who am I without the sport? But it's like, whoa, you have relationships that you've made. You've had processes and procedures that you've developed. This whole nutrition protocol that you didn't need at Texas A&M, but you need it now.
Yeah.
Understanding of supplements, the willingness to ask for help, a huge spokesman for therapy and journaling and meditation. Those are such amazing tools that if like we all integrated those in a customized capacity, they kind of synergize and sum up a pretty beautiful life.
Yeah. Well, and I think just, like even this last year, I had a lot of conversations very similar to everything that you're touching on with my mental coach. I feel like I was not behaving or acting the way that I wanted to through it all. And he had that, he posed that question a lot for me. Is like, at the end of this season, win or lose, Olympic team or not, how do you want to look back and who do you want to be through this all? I think that was a really, like a moment for me this season that changed a lot, because I was like, do I want to look back at this time and be anxiety ridden, just gripping so tightly to this thing and this achievement, and then make the team, but like not have enjoyed a second of the experience or the process? Like, that's not who I am. That's not Annie. And I think that track, has made me more neurotic and more fixated on the outcome. And when I look at who I am and my personality, that's really not who I am. Like, I really am like a fun loving, easygoing girl that loves to laugh and make people laugh and have fun. And so when I'm not aligning with who I am just because I really want this thing and I want to achieve this thing, that's not what I wanted. So I'm really glad that I kind of that my coach really forced me to answer those questions and figure out who I want to be and who am I outside of this thing. He was like, what do you even enjoy doing? He's like, what are you doing in your free time? And I'm like, well, I come home, I journal, I watch track video, I visualize. He's like,
everything was so marinated on the thing.
Completely on the thing. I like figure out my eating, my supplements. I watch Netflix with my dog. Like, he's like, so what are you doing outside of track that you like enjoy? He's like, are you even seeing your friends? And I'm like, well, I don't have time for that. Like, I don't have time in the Olympic season. The Olympic season's like very small window. I don't have time for friends. I don't have time for whatever. And he forced me. He's like, okay, well, your homework by next week, you need to have done something that you enjoy outside of track, and you need to see at least 1 or 2 friends. And so I went and took a pottery class, and I loved it. I love pottery. I've always talked about how I want to do it. And I jumped into class. I was probably the happiest I'd been all week. So little like challenges like that. I got coffee with a girlfriend. Like, that is really easy to do. Things like that fill your cup outside of your sport are going to make you way happier in the long run. And then you know the things that make you happy when that thing could get taken from you at any moment.
Yeah. Too much of anything, it becomes a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Right. And I think you unlocking that a little bit within this season, dropping your shoulders a little bit, having that pep in your step that you had when you walked in here today, and like really allowing yourself, you taste the different flavors in your tangible nutrition, but allowing yourself to taste the different flavors of life.
Yeah.
Right. It's making your life more colorful.
Totally. And it's really easy, I think, especially in the Olympic year, you train for so long for this 1 year to get tunnel vision and just cut everything else out. But I think that could be what derails you in the long run, because you're miserable doing it. It's like you're not having any fun in your life. And so, yeah, I just think balance is huge to success as well.
Because All Smith is all about forging yourself in the midst of adversity. Mm-hmm. And that's what a smith is, right? Forging something underneath an anvil, underneath extreme heat. Mm-hmm. Would you say this is the biggest bit of adversity for you right now? Because it's what you've known since you were 2 years old. Mm-hmm. And now you're in a season of life where you're like kind of asking what's next. You're coping with day by day, and kind of being in the present moment. But would you say this is the most difficult time in your life right now?
You know, I actually don't. And that's what's so beautiful about this is like, this was truly the biggest heartbreak I've ever experienced when it comes to track and field. It was a different heartbreak than like a relationship heartbreak. It was just something that I didn't expect. It was devastating. But because I feel like I've had that foundation of, you know, my mindfulness training, I've surrounded myself with loved ones, I've figured out who I am outside of my sport up until this point. I think God prepared me for this moment in a way. And I'm so grateful for that because I do have peace inside me. And like, although it didn't end at the Olympics, so many beautiful things have come from this experience. And I look back at, I learned so much, you know, training for 5 years to Tokyo, but I think a lot of it was more performance stuff. It's like my nutrition and things like that, mental training. I think the things that I've learned through this second Olympic cycle, I'm more grateful for, and it didn't end at the Olympics. I just feel like we've talked about identity. I feel like I've figured out how to make myself happy outside of, you know, a relationship, outside of a job, outside of a sport. And I think it's just shaped who I am. I feel like my character has grown so much through the experiences that have happened the last 3 years through adversity. So I'm happy that I can say to you that like, this isn't the hardest time in my life. And I'm really grateful for that. Although it was the biggest heartbreak I've ever had in track, it doesn't define me and it doesn't take away from my happiness. And that's what I didn't expect, and I'm really grateful for. You're
epitomizing the concept from LSKD. Enjoy the journey.
Enjoy the journey. Enjoy the process. It's so cliche, but it's true. And I look back at like, you know, I've been on high school state championships. I've been on college championships. I've gone to the Olympics. I look back at my time through my career, and like those moments, while they're amazing and incredible, they're not what I look back and I'm like, I enjoyed the most and I was so excited about. It's like the people that I met, the friendships that I've made, the lessons that I've learned along the way. Like those are the things that I'm grateful for looking back in this journey. It's not that I like have a medal from Olympic trials. Like
what's beautiful about that though is everything you just described are things that you're going to take with you to your grave one day.
Yeah.
You're not going to bring the medals, probably not. You're not going to bring the money, the bank account, or any of those things. No. It's the tangible things that nobody can take away. And who are you becoming? Who are you becoming, and what's the impact that you're going to have on others? Like what are you sharing? What impact are you having on people around you? And I'm grateful for sport because I think when you're in it for the medals and the glory and whatever. And then you learn that like, that wasn't the why at all. That's not what I took away from it. The human experience is that way. It's like, chase this thing. You think that's what you want, but you actually want all these things, but you don't know that until later. No, and you probably won't. Like, and that's the thing. I'm grateful for my faith as well, because it's like, I just think in those troubling, hard times, you know that there's a greater purpose and there's a reason why, but you just can't see it yet. I think that's been a huge reason I've had a lot of peace through this experience too. I love that you found peace through it all. Yeah. That's like something that's so powerful. That's what I felt when I walked away from basketball. I was like, I made my peace with the sport. I'm ready to move on. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time and your energy today. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to share my story. It means a lot. This is fun. Where can people find you? I'm on Instagram, Annie Kunz _7. That's where you can probably find me the most. I'm on TikTok, but like, I'm a geriatric with that. I literally don't know how to use it at all. So like, I'm not even gonna give you my handle. And then I'm hoping to have a website and potentially an app soon. I would love to like share workouts and nutrition stuff and just things I've learned along the way. So hopefully I can share that through my Instagram soon. Very cool. Yeah. I love it. Today was special. It was special. Thank you so much. Guys, if you enjoyed my conversation with Annie Kunz, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Until next time.